That's perfect. Okay, so welcome everyone who heard me today. So today is my podcast number 38. That's beautiful podcast. I can tell you why. Before we're going dive deep in, like always, master your emotion and find your truth and live without the truth. I changed it a little bit because before I was just only putting master your emotion and that was a full stop. But it's not enough for the people. They need to live with their own truth, not somebody else's truth, just only their own truth from the heart. But number 38, like always, I'm just only giving my audience them a little bit information. If they drawn to, they can go and find it, the meaning of the numbers, the angels numbers. So number 38 is the numbers of the creativity, abundance, everything is flowing in the right direction. But of course, you need to take the action. It's not like it's just only sitting on the sofa and wondering if something popping up. You can do that, but you need to be really, really advanced soul, I would like to say. So number 3 is a number of the creativity and joy and self-discovering, self-unraveling. And number 8 is an infinitive number. I love that number. I love that symbol anyway. And number 8 is expression and attracting the abundance. But if anyone is really, really drawn to, just go and research by your own. I'm not going to disempowering you. I'm just only inspiring you with that information. But today, I would like to just introduce the beautiful soul. I've been waiting, I would like to say, from 2019, maybe. I didn't know that time, but the time arrived, like always, divine time. I've got a beautiful soul today with me. And how can I say, the beautiful soul, unique soul, and as a Piers Cross. And he's a really, really, let me just only read it a little bit for you. He's a transformational coach and also the boarding school survivors. I hope so. I'm just only doing that correctly, but he can go and correct me in a minute. But definitely, he's helping also a man with the relationship and any kind of the traumatic events. I'm calling the traumatic events. I'm not calling the trauma because the trauma is, from my perspective, is so big and deep. Yes, so he's helping that depression, anxiety, and he's running the Beautiful Man Circle online. So if somebody would be like to feel and see if that's going to benefit for you, just go and sign up for it. But anyway, he's going to tell you a little bit more about when you need to go and find his work later on. But welcome, Piers. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. Would you mind just say a little bit about yourself? Maybe I missed something.
Yeah, thank you. Great
Mhm.
to speak to you. Yeah, I think it was 2019 I sent through my book when it was called The Wellbeing Way before I changed the title. And yeah, there we go. And yeah,
Yeah.
so basically since 2006 I've been working one-to-one with people, doing workshops, uh, doing kind of retreats, things like that. And yeah, essentially around well-being, around trauma, traumatic experiences. And in the last 10 years, mainly focusing around boarding school. And I've started to do a documentary recently linking in because so many of our leaders have been to boarding school. So just asking those questions. So that's me essentially. I'm very passionate about my work, and partly because I had a very big challenges as a child, as I write in the book. And yeah, it was like I had a real dark night of the soul. It was a very difficult time for a few years where I really broke down, fell apart. Um, and yeah, that's partly my story and coming out the other side.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because when I just only received your book in 2000, probably 19 or 20, I can't remember the time because time doesn't exist as a human concept. But anyway, so I was just only focused really, really, I really dived deep in because I had that time, my break time, a waking time, much more, I would like to say, much more intense than before because I slowly been in that journey. But that time, wow, that was an amazing book. Would you like to say a little bit more about this book and why did you wrote this book and what was the intention behind it?
Yeah, thank you, Gabby. So I originally, I mean, my story is I went to boarding school age 11 through till 18, 7 years. And I graduated, I worked in the city, in London in the financial sector. I went to an international business school based in France, based in London. And then in my mid-20s, I had a breakdown. So this was the year 2000. And over the next few years, I went into a very dark space. I was essentially homeless. I went to Africa, took a lot of drugs, didn't take care of myself, and eventually arrived in a Buddhist monastery. And that was 2002. And I totally fell apart, as I share in the book.
Yeah.
I self-harmed, tried to take my own life a few times. I lost 1.5 stone in weight. I had chronic fatigue, very, very poorly. And there was a journey of 3 years. I had a lot of support and I came out the other side and I learned so many things. So on leaving, I went to work in the corporate world again. And while I was there, people were saying, wow, amazing journey in the monastery. And I started to teach meditation, stress management. And that's really how the book came, was I arrived in the town I live now, Hebden Bridge, in 2008. And I started to write my story, what had happened in the monastery, the tools, because for me, I feel I'm fascinated by tools. What are the things which really help us? What are the things that I
Yeah.
use every day, the things I use with my clients? So that was the impetus behind it, is to share what I'd been through and to put down onto paper some of the experiences really and the learnings and the real challenges I wanted to share in my book, some of the real traumatic events that I'd been through.
Yeah, wow, that's so amazing because I remember when I just only found your first, I don't know, maybe that wasn't first, but definitely that was a sound video on the YouTube. And you've been teaching the meditation. Oh, wow. You looks completely different that time. I was like a completely young boy. I'm not saying you are not young,
Mhm.
but that was definitely in a different stage of your life. I was saying, oh my God, I was like a really, really been inspired by you. Uh, yeah, you show the people like a vulnerability. So you open yourself. Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you so much because definitely you changed lots of people's lives through that meditation on being online and the people didn't know that time. So how did you? That was so many questions. I've got it in my head. How did you came over your difficult time and what has really helped you? I mean, the another things like around the emotions, how the emotion arise inside you. How did you discover them?
Lots of questions. Yeah, so the first one, emotion.
Yeah, focus
I
on the
think,
emotion first. Yeah,
yeah, because I think the name of your um podcast is
podcast.
manage your emotions. So I was shut down, and I see that in British society we are very disconnected from our emotions because our leaders are. And I learned that in boarding school. I learned this idea in trauma, they call it dissociation. So this is something that is taught in these schools, not always consciously, but to squash your emotions. You can't be angry. If you're angry in my school, you were called psycho. If you cried, you were called a wimp and you were laughed at. That's what happened to me.
Mm,
And therefore I learned to squash my emotion down until I couldn't feel hatred or anger, but I also couldn't feel love, couldn't connect to who I was in my being. And I started to get sick, mentally sick, thought I was going insane in London.
yeah.
And I went to the doctor and he laughed at me. And so it was at that point I was like, what on earth do I do? So how I started to heal was in my monastic experience. I started to paint. I've got one of my paintings here. And I just started to,
Wow, I see.
use and connect to my emotions and use my hands to feel. And Robert Moore, the Jungian analyst, in his book, The Lover Archetype, The Lover Within, he says
Mhm.
that when we connect with color, it's like the pre-verbal part of us. So it's like when we're really young, when before we could speak. So as I was painting, I was able to start to connect to my tears. And once I see, for a lot of us, especially British people, we have our emotions walled up in a reservoir, big dam. And we're frightened of letting our emotions out because if that damn wall goes, it will flood the valley. And what I found with the painting is it was just opening up the sluice gate, letting the little bit of water out, and gradually I started to cry. I started to cry every day for almost 2 years. And that's when my emotions really started. And I worked with dreams as well. So again, my Jungian analyst was very supportive to write down my dreams. And it was intense. I was a monastic, so I was getting up at 4:30 to 5 o'clock. We were had 2 meals a day. We wouldn't eat after midday. And then once a week, I was going all the way. I think it was a 7 hour journey to go and see a therapist, a Jungian therapist, for 3 or 4 hours. And that was once a week. So I'd leave at 7 in the morning. I'd get back at 6 at night. And
Wow.
and every night I would get up and I'd write my dreams down, two or three. But that was how I accessed my emotions. Really, it was through the painting, but also the dreams, because it was like someone saying to me, you should be kind to yourself. And I was like, no, bullshit, I don't deserve that. I'm a piece of shit. But when my dreams and I started to understand that's what they were saying to me, then the tears came. It's like, oh my God, I'm so cruel to myself.
Yeah.
And it
Wow.
broke my heart and it broke me open, really.
Yeah, so how did you, because so many people just say you've got the nightmares and that kind of the things during the night. So that's the emotion which they've got in the subconscious mind. That's just that's battle when they're going through, but they don't really know that meaning of it. So how did you, so that's therapy. You went for the 3 hours, you've been sitting and talking. That's
Mhm.
really helped you a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
when you mentioned. Yeah, okay. So how did you find it also the painting? So is your higher self, if you call it that higher self, or your inner knowing or your subconscious mind told you, okay, Piers, go and draw, then you can open your heart much more deeper. So how do people will be know? Is that really true sign to opening their own emotions?
Well, I feel if you look on an archetypal level, we've got four archetypes: king, queen, warrior, warrioress, magician,
Yeah.
and lover. So these are archetypal forms that are in, you know, whether it's the collective consciousness, we all have these aspects, the overarching, the leader, the father, the mother, the doer, the action, the body of the warrior, the magician's the mind, and then the lover is the
Mhm.
emotion. Most of us have squashed the lover. So often how we reconnect the lover is through creativity, through dance, through movement, through spontaneity. So, I mean, I got into it because there wasn't much to do in the monastery, to be honest. The abbot, the first walk I went with him round the local lake, he said to me, "What are your habits, Piers?" And we walked a few more steps, and I thought, I don't have any. And then I said, oh, actually, it's football, watching football, and drinking alcohol, getting drunk as possible. Those were my habits. And so when I got to the monastery, it was like, there were opportunities, supporters who were saying, oh, I could buy you some. Um, I think actually, yeah, I remember how I got into it. My mother is an artist. And so she does Chinese brush painting. And so I
Okay.
started to do Chinese brush painting. And I was just doing black and white, or just black basically on paper. And my therapist said to me, have you thought about doing color? And I said, no, 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 I want to um
Black.
I want black because I want to get it perfect before I move on to doing color. And then
Mhm.
one day I was like, oh, I'll try with color. And that was when I started to connect to my emotions. And it was
Yeah.
very intuitive. So I'd paint and I would have these, you know, tubs of paint around me. And I would just, what's the emotion I'm feeling? So red might be anger, or blue or green might be love.
Yeah.
But I would often start with one color and then move on to another. And I have an attic now full of probably 100+ paintings that I've done over the years. Um, and so yeah, so I think that was it. It was, yeah, just meant to be.
Oh yeah, that's amazing because yeah, sometimes you need to follow your intuition. You need to follow the people call inner guides, knowingness, whatever they would like to name it. That's okay, as long they feel really good and fulfill inside them. The name is doesn't matter actually, to be honest. The only the meaning they put in on that word. So that's really essential. But that's amazing. You're just painting and you've been doing a lot of healing on yourself through that painting. And how did you mm, how did you keep that openness inside yourself? I mean, because trying to work on yourself is challenging. Okay, you've been doing the healing, of course, so that would be a mastering your emotions, but how you can keep them in the balance and how you can keep them in the same, maybe not the same stage because we are living in this world, ups and we've got the ups and downs. So what helped you just only keeping that balance during that time?
I think it was the community, having a group of men and women, but mainly it was men, just benevolent men. I'd never experienced that. I think boarding school, my father had a very tumultuous relationship with my father. He was a very angry man, very violent and alcoholic and, naval officer, so very kind of imposing. And so I wasn't used to it. Boarding school, there was no one there. It was just boys. You've got one teacher or two teachers for 50 boys or 50 girls. So it's just neglect. So in the monastery, I was going through my stuff, but I had these amazing men who were very wise, just supporting me, going, I've got you, you know. And
That's
that was,
amazing.
yeah, very healing. And I see we do need community. We've kind of started to move away from community. There was some research done in 2008, 2010, saying that the most together community now in 2010 is the equivalent of the most um, disconnected community 30 years before. We've become very much in our own box, not connecting with others, no community sense. And I feel that we're as humans, we need that. And
Oh
so
yeah.
in the monastery, I had that. I had friends around me. I had people there just supporting me. We were on a similar journey. And on one level, I felt like I came home when I was there. It was like, and I felt safe. And I think,
Oh wow, that's yeah. Oh God.
yeah, I can let go. It's like it's such an important thing for humans to feel safe. And when we do, and I really felt like it was a held space, which it was. We had precepts, so there was no drink, no drugs, no sex, no food after midday. So it was very strict, but it was a held container. And that held container helped the transformation process. And again, coming back to Robert Moore and his work, he says, in order for us to be initiated, we need three things. One is a ritual elder, one is a safe space, and the other is some form of humiliation.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether it's shaving the head, in Africa it's scarification, or and for me, I shaved my head. I was had to wear white robes for 3 years. That was the humiliation, not being able to do what I wanted to do. But it was that transformation from boy to man, or the
Yeah.
beginning, because I realized then when I was in my late 20s at that point, I realized I'm still a boy. I might be in a man's body, but I'm still a boy. And I see that's what's happening in society. So many people who are meant to be men, they're boys because they haven't had an initiation. Or, I think it's different from women. I feel that then, we need initiation for women. And there are, as women have said to me, there are natural menopause, there's menstruation, there's childbirth, which are kind of initiations. With men, we don't necessarily have that.
Yeah. Mhm.
We need that. What is it to be a man?
Yeah, that's definitely, I agree with you. I can give you the quick story. I went on Saturday just for the meeting, for NLP practitioner meeting. And
Mm.
that was a six of us, and that was like maybe three women and three men. But when we are starting conversation around the emotions as well, and around not being good enough and suppress that kind of the emotion. So I would like to just only articulate for everyone who is watching us. It's not only the British society of men that they suppress their emotions, because I'm come from originally from Poland, and the Polish people, Polish men, oh wow, it's like around 60, 70 and 80, a little bit 80, they suppress their own emotions completely. But it's not their fault, but they've been grew up in that kind of the program, I would like to say. Yeah, so we just only discussed it a little bit around that stuff. Yeah, so that's a lot of men, they are not a man. And a lot of women, they are not a woman. Even me, I wasn't a woman fully. I was in the masculine energy because I grew up with my grandmother when my parents left me when I was 3 months years old. So that's we need to just only need more human, need more souls like you to rising up and just only awake that masculine energy inside them. So that's why you're running the Circle Men tribe online. And also I just only saw that beautiful stuff you're doing also outside in the wood or something like that. Would you like to tell a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I've not done that since lockdowns. I
Oh,
was
wow.
doing it every 6 months. I just got too busy during lockdowns with the podcast and with the book
Okay.
and then with the film. I mean, the men's circle, it was any man could come to the men's circle, but because my work's with boarders and people who've been to boarding school, now it's just for boarding school survivors, the men's circle. So at the moment, we meet once a month, the third Thursday of the month. So if someone's listening to this and they're a boarder, please do join the mailing list and come
Yeah.
along. And I think we do need that. I think one-to-one work, which is, 80, 90% of my work is one-to-one work. That's so important. And we also need to supplement that with group like Nick Duffel or, Andy's Man Club, all of these things. We need to have this space to share with other men and other women. I think it's important for us to do things in community, men and women and children, and just women and just men,
Yeah,
because very different experience.
it is. So how the men will be know they've got that traumatic syndrome or unfulfilled childhood, and then can reach you out, or they can just only start healing by themselves, by their own.
So how do they do that? How do they heal?
No, how they will be know, because that's kind of the symptom. So if they not been heard, not been seen, and then went to the boarding school, because I had my colleague and we've been coaching together,
Mm.
and one day he unraveled something for me. He said, "Oh my goodness, I went to the boarding school. Maybe that idea, or maybe not worthy or not good enough. That emotion is suppressed. I couldn't cry even." I said, "Yes, that's a connection." And he said lots of different experience from that boarding school. But he was awake. He was really conscious about it. He was a coach. But so many of the men, they are not coaching themselves. Even they don't know is something that kind of things exist. So how they will be know they need a support? How they will be know they need a help from others?
Yeah, so I think it's the symptoms really, whether we have the symptoms. So for me, not everyone who goes to boarding school is negatively impacted. I'd say about 10% thrive in a boarding school.
Mhm.
But as Nick Duffel says, everyone had to survive in these institutions. So sometimes people say to me, I loved it. I'm going, great. I said, do you have any of these symptoms? And one is addictions. Another is struggle in intimacy or relationships, parenting. Some do very well parenting, but they struggle being intimate. Another is workaholism. Another is inability to relax. They can't stop. Another is inauthenticity. So we put up this facade, oh, this is who I am, but reality. But the main thing that Nick Duffel says is emotion. We can't connect to our emotions. We can't cry, and therefore it's very difficult for us to be in a relationship because we can't be vulnerable. We can't say truly what we feel. And so I feel, you know, if you notice you've got those symptoms on my website, I have a list of, say, 20 symptoms. People will say, oh my God, I've got all of them. Yes, you might have loved the place, but there's no touch. We know what happens to children. We saw that in Romania with the orphanages after Ceausescu. Babies who'd not been touched, they were just inert. They stopped moving. As soon as they started to be touched again, they came
Yeah.
back to life. The children, maybe for 10 years, will not be touched apart from holiday times, and that's only 3 months of the year. That's a serious deprivation. Another thing is neglect. You're left on your own with 50 other children. And the word I've often heard, it's like Lord of the Flies. It's chaos.
Yeah.
That's not a safe environment. So yes, you might have loved it, but do you have these symptoms? Are you struggling? And another is depression, suicidal thoughts as well. So that's often how we know. Peter Levine in his work, Healing Trauma, he talks
Right.
about we're hypervigilant. We have these different symptoms that mean, oh yeah, maybe I did have some trauma. And I
Mhm.
spoke to a psychologist who trained at Oxford on my podcast, and she said, look, 100% of us have had some form of trauma. It might have been really big or little, um, you know, and I just see
Yeah.
it's, yeah, what are the symptoms? Where are you at?
Yeah, that's totally, yeah, that's totally, I agree. When I just only read the book, the Mate Gabor, when he wrote that book, I was like a big trauma and small trauma. And when I went and I did the podcast with also with his son, that was the same, yeah, conclusion at the end when he said like a small traumatic event or the big traumatic event, the war, or like just when he said, I don't know, that's kind of perspective because for the child could be a perceiving that trauma as a, not being touched by mother, that could be a really big trauma. It's not like from the adult perspective. So it depends what kind of the lenses we're going see that situation. For me, when I wasn't rejected completely from my mother, unconsciously, I just only grasped everything. I just only recorded, my body recorded, but consciously, I wasn't rejected until maybe 5 years ago. I just only as I accepted, yes, I've been rejected from my mother when I was 3 months old. And that whole life changed for me. So consciously, like you said, the people just saying, yes, no, I wasn't, that was fine, that was really good time. But subconsciously, wow, there's a lot of things going on. That's a chaos is, yeah, created. Yeah, that's definitely. So what inspired you? I know you had a podcast with Matt Gabor. No, Matt, no, Matt, I forgot the name. Is it Matt
Gabor
Gabor?
Mate.
Gabor Matt,
Yeah.
opposite, sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't a podcast. It was for the documentary.
Yeah, so that's what I would like to say. And that was inspire you. I'm just only asking you, is that inspire you to create that beautiful movie and create that film around the boarding school?
Yeah, I think it's like on the first level, I realized how much I was a mess from my experience at boarding school.
Mhm.
Then over the last 10 years, I've been working with ex-boarders, and I realized how much of a mess they've been, and the wounding and the hurt that they have had. And then it was in the last couple of years, I was like just doing more and more research and realizing just how many of our global leaders have been to boarding school. And when you read their stories, you're realizing it's deeply traumatizing. I mean,
Mhm.
if you read Richard Branson's book, you know, he was sexually abused. He was beaten every week until he bled at boarding school from age 7. And then age 14, he was expelled and he went and tried to commit suicide. It was only because the teachers came out and the other kids, they stopped him jumping off the cliff.
Wow,
You realize all of these people, Tony Blair, you read his book here,
I
uh, he
swear.
was he was beaten and age for the first year at boarding school by the older boys. Age 14, he ran away, but not only did he run away, he got on a plane, he tried to leave to go to Barbados to actually leave the country. And you realize that our leaders, as Peter Levine says, the effect of unresolved trauma can be devastating. So what the film came out of is this idea that are they carrying trauma? And if they are, how's that going to impact their decision making? Is it unconscious? Is it in the subconscious? They might say they want to help others, But deep down inside, the program is it's all about me. It's all about hating the vulnerable. It's all about, these unconscious programs that they're running. And so that's how the documentary and what made me inspired is I feel it's a key issue for humanity. You know, you realize that
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg, Donald Trump, Rishi Sunak, David Cameron, the head of BBC, the head of Channel 4, they're all ex-boarding school. You're like, oh my God, Rupert Murdoch,
Wow.
Piers Morgan, they're all ex-boarders. And you're suddenly like, oh my God, we're being fed this image of the world through these people who are potentially carrying trauma. You know,
Wow. That's so big, I would like to say, because also I really appreciate you just when you start creating that film, because also it's like a connection between mother, father, how they providing the stuff for their kids. That's the connection that they need to be example. They need to heal themselves before they're going to have a children. But no one taught us, no one told us how to be a good mother, how to be a good father. We don't have that description, isn't it? How is your view on it?
well, yeah, you're taught instead of, it's not, if you look at the African tribes, the
Mm,
Sandbush people, the children know they've got 20 or 30 adults they can turn to with questions. It's not just mum and dad,
yeah,
so they're all parenting. It's like they say this idea that, it takes a village to bring up a child. Well, suddenly you don't have your parents there, age 7, 8. I was 11, Boris Johnson was 11. You suddenly, who looks after you? It's the other children. And where did they learn from? Oh, the other children. So you've got these people who are trying to be adults. And I see that when I look at some of the leaders. Nick Duffel talks about this in his book, Wounded Leaders, that it's the little boy who's running the show. You know, it's the little boy. So not having mum and dad around, it
yeah,
can be devastating. Who do we learn from? We learn from little boys to be how to be men. And what does that make? Well, you're just going to be a little boy. You need
yeah.
men and women to teach us how to be adults, not little boys.
Mm. Yeah, that's why I've been drawn to learn from elders. So I remember my grandmother when she gave me lots of advices. She wasn't good mother because she was my grandmother, but she was looking after me. But anyway, what that kind of the knowledge and information she had, it was like a mind blowing for me. But uh, now the generations like of the women and men, they don't have too much knowledge and information. That's the wise people, the eldest people. They push them away on the second. Like just when you putting on the back seat, let's go, we say this way, and say, no, you're talking nonsense or something like that. Of course, some of them they're talking like that. It's okay. But yeah, we've got that variety in the society. But definitely we need to learn from the old elders. But coming back to your film, so what else you would like to include in that film? I know there's only show everyone how the society now works, but is anything behind it that's really, really, really deep, that deep meaning or maybe deep intention is over there?
Well, I think, as men and women, we need to have a mission, a purpose. And so mine is, yeah, the why I'm doing this is it's to do with the children. Our children, if they're in these institutions, yes, they say they've changed, but their parents are still not there, still no touch. It's still, so the intention behind the film is one would be to close early boarding, for me below 13, eventually below 16, to bring to light, okay, you've put your child in there, you're abusing them. As the NSPCC says on their website, they say neglect is the ongoing failure to meet the child's basic needs and the most common form of child abuse. So if we are essentially abusing the children, then we need to close the schools. Um, you know, Another thing would be there's still no mandatory reporting for sexual abuse. So if sexual abuse happens, and the teachers know about it, but they don't have to report it to the police even now, so
Oh,
abuse can still go on even now. There was a campaign, I think it was uh, finished last year, and they're just kind of putting it together. The ICSA, the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, cost 184 million pounds, and they suggested to make mandatory reporting, but the government still hasn't done it. So that would be another thing with the film. And another thing is trauma-informed teachers, trauma-informed. I've had kids playing up rather than going they're a bad kid to realize, no, that's trauma.
yeah.
They're showing the symptoms of trauma.
Wow. Yeah, I think so. That would be a good move and a good movement for the educational system, because my daughters, they're in the school and also they experienced a lot of different stuff. Uh, they had a wow, they called a pastoral room, but
Mm.
I don't believe that pastoral room in that school, in any kind of the school, because I went there and I experienced. I've been working in the school last year. I just only been called to go and check through my higher self, yeah, I've been just Nicole go there. And just when I went there, when I experienced that place, I was like, I was shocked. I was like, oh my goodness, that's so chaos. And they're just only pretending that they supporting the children. Of course, some of them they really in, but most of them they are just only pretending. They punishing them, but they also giving them pastoral room. So they're punishing them through the tension. For me, it doesn't make any sense. And
Mm.
then, oh, go to the pastoral room and just they giving. And also they telling them, just only tell everything to us. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So it's like
Mm.
yeah, so I love that idea, what you're just only doing, because there will be lots of beautiful movement and maybe lots of people will be opening their eyes much more widely, and lots of parents, mother and father will be watching and they'll be recognizing in themselves, oh, I've got the wounds, I've got the trauma, maybe I need to heal myself. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I think all of us, I think if we see it as a bad thing to heal trauma, it's like, oh, there's something wrong with me. No, we see it, and there's this idea of
Yeah,
trauma. I've forgotten the wording, but basically seeing trauma as a good thing. We can see it as traumatic growth. It's like post-traumatic growth.
yeah,
So we can see it as an opportunity to really grow. So we all have trauma, but do we choose to turn it into gold, turn it into a gift? You know, because when we are truly inspired, we will do anything to fulfill our mission. So for me, the documentary, it's like I'll just keep going till it's made, because I have that that mission of what I went through. And I think if we can see that the wounds that we've got can be a gift, and we can turn us into people who can transform the world, and to see that as gold, I think that's really key. So I think it's time for us to do that work.
yeah. So are you going to involve in that film anything, any kind of the techniques, how the children can support themselves, or how the fathers, mothers can support the children, or teachers?
Yeah, so we probably won't have time to go into it in too much depth. The idea is, what's the impact on the child?
Mhm.
How does it impact them going to these institutions? Second, how does it impact them as an adult, especially if they're in positions of power? And the third part would be, we're going to film a retreat of 10 men and women, and it's going to be a journey of what are some of the wounds, and film that of them connecting to their
Okay.
emotions, connecting to their yeah, their issues and what's come up for them.
Okay, so that's why, wow, that was so amazing. So when are you planning, or when do you got that finish date of the film?
Yeah, difficult to say, but we're hoping before the general election, so probably September time, maybe,
Mhm.
mid to late part of the year. Again, it's difficult to say. Our filming, we're going off to do this retreat in a few weeks' time, in 3 weeks' time. And then after that, yeah, we've got a few other quite well-known ex-boarders who want to speak up, so we're going to be filming them. So we'll be adding that, and then it'll be just cutting it together. making the film.
Wow. Wow. I planning this film is going to be in the cinema on that a big stage somewhere. Oh, so where the people can watch this when
Yeah,
will
so
be.
eventually it'll be a bit like Gabor Mate's film, The Wisdom of Trauma. It will be on a website that people can watch it, so everyone can watch it. But we'll also do premieres. We've got a few different ones, one in Glasgow, one we're going to be probably London. Someone's also offered New York. So there's a few different places where we can show the film. So yeah, I think we'll just see, but we'll see what happens as we move forward.
Yeah, I just only got an idea, just only pop up. Maybe you can take it or maybe you can leave it. It's up to you. It's like, how about if you go imagine that movie and that film will be just landed in front of the head teacher of the boarding school. And that would be so amazing. Or maybe just only give that a little bit slightly, I don't know, small chunk for the like a mainstream school. That would be amazing when the children will be just only learning something from it. How is that sound?
Yeah, we've thought about that. The head teachers, I think the head teacher of the boarding school won't like the film
Ah,
because, if the film is going to be to close the boarding schools, which is the message, certainly the younger ones,
mhm.
16 plus, I think that's a great age. Children thrive. My sister went age 16. You've got that independence as long as it's
Yeah,
a loving, supportive environment,
yeah,
but earlier than that. So I think it's a great idea to show it to the headmasters. I could imagine that they won't be very happy. Us
I
saying, close your schools or turn them into sixth form colleges.
oh
Uh,
wow.
but I feel that's what's needed. It's like, you know, the early boarding, it's just like, yeah, it's really damaging developmentally.
Definitely.
I think Gabor Mate says developmental trauma is repeated or prolonged exposure to adversity during development, such as abuse, neglect, or being raised in a chaotic or unpredictable environment. That for me is a boarding school. It's a developmental trauma. It needs to be closed.
Yeah, but also your experience, I would like to come back if I can. So your experience is much more intense trauma, I would like to say, in that world, and anyone who went to the boarding school, because you've been closed and you didn't have a chance. Actually, you had a chance, but you didn't have a chance to go outside and shut
Mm.
that door. But some of us, when I rise up in the family, chaotic family, whoa, that was really a lot of trauma in my house when I was a child. Uh, yeah, I had that option to open the door and run away to the forest because I was living in the country at that time. So I had that escaped. So I had a choice: go outside and never come back. But yeah, I know that that's really challenging time for them. But I had that vision when Jesus had been saying, oh, the head teacher will be. I really knew. And the one day the universe, the God will be just only sending you that kind of the head teacher with that beautiful emotions and energy will be saying, yes, can you bring it that film? I'm going to post it. I'm going to share with that beautiful students already. Because
Mm.
that's the reason is behind it. That's why you're doing this.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I, it's a great vision. Thank you, Gabby.
No, that's definitely. And then I'm going to tell you when they will be that film will be out, and in the next couple of the years, you'll be there. You'll be there definitely. Thank you so much. So how is that? The last question before I'm going to wrap it up is like when you had it. I'm asking everyone who is on my podcast, so you don't have to answer, but if you would like to. So what was really supporting you during the difficult time, really downtime, or maybe just any breakthrough? So any kind of the affirmation, any kind of the meditation, what's really helped you? Or that could be just only one word you've been repeating all over and all over.
Well, I'd say this. I'd say first of all, my wife has been an amazing support. So just having people there, but the last 15, 16 years, my wife. And I think the second thing would be exercise, getting outside, you know. When I was in the monastery, get really down, I just go put my boots on and walk. That's another thing which really saved me. So people, but also physicality. We're very heady. We're very on our computers. It's like after we finish here, I'll go for a walk. So
Yeah.
I do that exercise. I think that's something which has been really, really powerful.
Yeah, thank you. That's moving, that flow, the life force energy inside you. But we've been, yeah, that's amazing. So where the people can find you and how they can going to sign up for your newsletter, whatever you would like to say to them.
Yeah, so my website is piers-cross.com. You can, on the home screen, there is a video which people can join my newsletter. There, I probably email people once a month, something like that. I also do videos on YouTube, as you know. I put them
Oh
up
yes, I recommend everyone just go
every,
and watch it. If you watch it,
every Wednesday. I put a video up, which is just about some topic, and then on the Friday, I often put a podcast up. So yes, that's how
that's
you find out. Well,
that's
thank you, Gabby, for
amazing.
your work and
Thank you.
for the everything you're doing and the transformations you've had. So
Oh, thank you. You helped me a lot, and you're still helping me a lot. You inspire me as well, and probably you inspire so many people around as well. So thank you for accepting my podcast. Thank you so much.
a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.